Be me, Melissa, Human Resources Director. Been in this position for 3 years now, and finally feel like I'm making real change. Spent most of my career watching qualified women get passed over while mediocre men climbed the ladder. Not on my watch anymore. Today is like any other Monday, checking emails and preparing for my weekly workplace equity and inclusion session. These sessions are mandatory for all employees, especially the men who need the most education. Honestly, it's exhausting having to constantly educate grown adults about basic human decency. But someone has to do the work, walking through the office at 9 a.m. sharp. Notice the usual suspects huddled around the coffee machine. Bunch of developers probably complaining about having to attend my sessions again. They think I don't hear their little comments, but I do. Here comes the fun police. Wonder what we're not allowed to say today. Typical defensive behavior when confronted with uncomfortable truths about their advantages. Sit down at my desk and review my notes for today's session. Topic is recognizing microaggressions in daily interactions. Printed out some great examples of seemingly innocent phrases that actually perpetuate harmful stereotypes. Things like, "You're pretty smart for a girl," or "Wow, you're really technical for someone in human resources." These men need to understand how their words impact others. 10 a.m. arrives and I head to conference room B. About 15 employees filing in, mostly the usual suspects. Can already see the eye rolls and heavy sighs. Christian from DevOps slumps in his chair like a teenager forced to attend church. Brian from Quality Assurance keeps checking his phone like he has somewhere more important to be. The entitlement is just incredible. Start my presentation with statistics about workplace discrimination. Immediately hands go up with questions that are really just attempts to derail. Melissa, don't you think we should focus more on actual work skills rather than all this social stuff? That's Brian, of course, always trying to minimize the importance of creating an inclusive environment. Brian, that attitude is exactly why these sessions are necessary. You can't separate workplace effectiveness from equity and inclusion. When people don't feel safe and valued, productivity suffers. This isn't optional. See him exchange looks with Christian, probably planning to complain to management again like they always do. Continue with my presentation about inclusive language. Explain how phrases like guys, when addressing mixed groups, reinforces male default thinking. Suggest alternatives like everyone or team. Immediately get pushback. This is ridiculous, Melissa. It's just a word. Nobody means anything by it. That's Jake from Front-End Development. When did everything become so complicated? We're all just trying to do our jobs here. Take a deep breath and maintain professional composure. Jake, this is exactly the kind of dismissive attitude that creates hostile work environments. Just because something doesn't affect you personally doesn't mean it's not harmful to others. Your impact matters more than your intent. See several men shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Good. Discomfort means learning is happening. Need to push through their resistance. Let me give you a concrete example. Last month during the product launch meeting, when Sarah suggested the user interface redesign, 3 different people interrupted her. When Christian suggested the exact same thing 20 minutes later, everyone listened and praised his innovation. That's not coincidence. That's unconscious bias in action. Christian immediately gets defensive. Wait a minute, that's not fair. I didn't even know Sarah had suggested that. And nobody interrupted her on purpose. Maybe she just wasn't being clear enough. Here we go with the gaslighting. Christian, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Instead of examining your own behavior, you're making excuses and blaming Sarah. This is a perfect example of how privilege works. You benefit from being heard while others are dismissed, then claim it's their fault. Can see the frustration building in the room. Several men are whispering to each other, probably plotting how to get me removed from my position like they tried last year. But I have documentation of everything. And leadership finally understands the importance of this work. Decide to address the elephant in the room directly. I know some of you think these sessions are unnecessary or even discriminatory against men. But let me be clear. Pointing out privilege isn't persecution. Being asked to examine your advantages isn't oppression. The discomfort you feel right now, that's what marginalized groups experience every single day. Brian stands up abruptly. You know what, Melissa? I've had enough of this. Every week you drag us in here and tell us we're terrible people just for existing. I work hard, I treat everyone with respect, and I'm tired of being lectured like I'm some kind of villain. Classic defensive response. They always make it about their hurt feelings instead of acknowledging the real harm their behavior causes. Brian, nobody called you a villain, but your reaction right now shows how much work we still have to do. Getting upset when asked to examine privilege is a textbook example of fragility. Fragility? Are you kidding me right now? His voice is getting louder. Other men in the room are nodding in agreement with him. This is exactly the kind of toxic solidarity I'm trying to break down. Yes, fragility. When someone points out systemic advantages you've benefited from your whole life, your immediate response is anger and denial. Instead of listening and learning, you're making yourself the victim. This is precisely why these conversations are so necessary. Jake jumps in, clearly agitated. Melissa, you have no idea what any of us have been through in our lives. You sit there making assumptions about our privilege when you don't know anything about our backgrounds. I grew up poor, worked 3 jobs to pay for college, and earned everything I have. But apparently none of that matters because I'm a man? They just don't get it. Individual hardships don't negate systemic advantages. Need to help them understand the bigger picture. Jake, I'm not diminishing your personal struggles, but having faced economic challenges doesn't mean you haven't also benefited from male privilege. You can experience disadvantage in one area while having advantages in another. The fact that you got those 3 jobs instead of equally qualified women, that's privilege in action. The room is getting tense now. Several men are talking at once. Christian stands up and faces me directly. Melissa, this is insane. You're literally telling us that everything good that's happened in our lives is because of our gender. That our hard work doesn't matter, our skills don't matter, our achievements don't matter. How is that fair? How's that motivating? How is that supposed to make us want to work together? He's getting emotional now, probably feeling threatened by having his worldview challenged. This is exactly what happens when comfortable people are forced to confront reality. Christian, acknowledging privilege doesn't diminish your accomplishments. It just provides context for how those accomplishments were made possible. The goal isn't to make you feel bad, it's to help you understand how systems work so we can make them more equitable. Your resistance to this concept is actually proving my point. Meeting is clearly going off the rails, but sometimes breakthrough moments look like breakdowns. They need to sit with this discomfort instead of running away from it. Check the time and see we're already over. Alright everyone, I know this was challenging today. That's the point. I want you all to think about what we discussed and how you can apply these insights to your daily interactions. Remember, creating inclusive environments is everyone's responsibility, not just human resources'. As people file out, can hear the grumbling and complaints. This is getting out of hand. She's lost it completely. We need to talk to someone about this. Typical resistance to change. They'll come around eventually, they always do. Spend the rest of the day documenting the session and planning follow-up activities. Maybe individual coaching sessions for the most resistant employees. Brian and Christian clearly need additional support to work through their defensiveness. Jake might be salvageable if I can help him connect his own experiences of struggle to empathy for others. Around 3 p.m, get an email from the Chief Executive Officer's assistant. Emergency all-hands meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance. For all employees. No additional details provided. Bit unusual, but probably announcing some new initiative or policy change. Hopefully something that will support the culture transformation work I'm leading. Maybe new budget for diversity and inclusion programs. Company has been making good progress under current leadership. Rest of the day passes normally. Few employees stop by with questions about upcoming training schedules. Sarah from marketing thanks me for addressing the interruption issue in today's session. She confirms it's been an ongoing problem, but feels like things are starting to improve. This is exactly why the work matters. Head home feeling good about the day despite the pushback. Resistance means the message is landing. Change is never comfortable for those who've been benefiting from the status quo. But that's not my problem to solve. My job is to create equitable workplaces, not to make everyone feel good about it. Tuesday morning, arrive early to set up for the all-hands meeting. Conference room A is packed by 8:45. Can see clusters of male employees talking in hushed tones, probably still processing yesterday's session. Good, means they're actually thinking about it. 9 a.m. sharp and Chief Executive Officer walks in with someone I don't recognize. Tall guy in expensive suit, probably consulting firm partner or potential investor. Chief Executive Officer looks a bit nervous, which is unusual. He's normally very confident in these settings. Good morning everyone, thank you all for attending on short notice. Today marks a significant transition for our company. We've recently been acquired by a former employee who's built an incredibly successful business. I'd like to introduce your new Chief Executive Officer and owner. The man in the expensive suit steps forward. Something about him looks familiar, but can't place it. Probably just has one of those faces. Thank you everyone. My name is Derek. Some of you might remember me from a few years ago when I worked here as a senior developer. Feel my stomach drop. Derek. Wait. Derek, who I had to let go for creating a hostile work environment? Derek, who constantly challenged my authority and questioned basic equity principles? No way this is the same person. He continues speaking and I recognize the voice now. Definitely the same Derek who was terminated for toxic behavior. But how is he standing here as the new owner? This has to be some kind of mistake. I know this might come as a surprise to some of you. 2 years ago, I was fired from this company on what I now know were completely false pretenses. Since then, I've built a software company that was recently acquired for $800 million. I used a portion of that to purchase this company because I have some unfinished business here. Room is completely silent. Can feel people looking in my direction. Blood is pounding in my ears. This can't be happening. Derek's eyes, match, scan the room, and land directly on me. His expression is cold, controlled anger. Melissa, I think we need to have a conversation. My office, now. Everyone else, please continue with your normal work. Department heads will meet with me individually this afternoon. Legs feel weak as I stand up. Try to maintain professional composure, but hands are shaking. Follow him out of the conference room while 60 pairs of eyes watch. Whispers start immediately behind us. He leads me to what used to be the Chief Executive Officer's office, sits behind the desk like he belongs there, which apparently he does now. This is a nightmare. Sit down, Melissa. His voice is calm, but I can hear the fury underneath. We have a lot to discuss. Try to take control of the conversation. Derek, I think there might be some confusion here about your previous employment. If you'll let me pull your file, we can review the circumstances that led to your departure. I'm sure we can clear up any misunderstandings. He leans back in the chair and stares at me for a long moment. Misunderstandings? Is that what we're calling it? You accused me of creating a hostile work environment when I questioned your training methods. You said I was displaying toxic masculine behavior when I asked for documentation of your claims. You fired me for being resistant to workplace equity initiatives, when all I did was ask for evidence. Need to defend my professional judgment. His version of events is completely skewed. Derek, if you recall, there were multiple incidents where you undermined my authority in front of other employees. You consistently challenged equity policies that were designed to create a more inclusive workplace. Your behavior was having a negative impact on team dynamics and employee morale. His laugh is bitter and angry. Multiple incidents? You mean like when I asked why the new promotion criteria seemed to favor certain demographic groups? Or when I pointed out that your sensitivity training was creating more division than unity? Or when I requested documentation for your claim that our hiring practices were discriminatory? He's twisting everything, making reasonable management decisions sound arbitrary. Derek, those weren't good faith questions. They were attempts to derail important conversations about systemic inequities. When marginalized employees were trying to share their experiences, you were dismissing their concerns. That creates a hostile environment for people who are already vulnerable. He stands up abruptly and walks around the desk, looms over me while I'm still sitting. Classic intimidation tactic. Vulnerable? The only person being hostile was you, Melissa. You created an environment where half the workforce was afraid to speak up, where asking questions made you a target for termination, where being a man meant you were automatically suspect. Try to remain calm and professional. Derek, I understand you're upset about your termination, but these accusations are completely unfounded. I've always maintained professional standards and followed company policy. If you have specific complaints about my performance, they should go through proper human resources channels. He starts laughing again, harder this time. Human resources channels? You are the human resources channel, Melissa. That was the whole problem. You were judge, jury, and executioner with no oversight and no accountability. Well, guess what? Now there's oversight, and accountability is coming. Feeling panic rising, but try to stay in control. Derek, I think emotions are running high right now. Perhaps we should table this discussion and involve legal counsel. There are proper procedures for addressing workplace disputes. I'm willing to work with you to resolve any outstanding issues. His expression turns even colder. Oh, we're going to resolve issues, all right, starting with your employment. But first, I want you to understand exactly what you did and why it was wrong. Because for 2 years, I've been planning this conversation. Door opens, and Brian from Quality Assurance walks in without knocking. Derek must have called him. Brian, perfect timing. I was just explaining to Melissa why her position is being eliminated. Did you want to share your experiences with her management style? Brian looks directly at me with undisguised anger. Oh, absolutely. Melissa, for 3 years you made coming to work miserable. Every day wondering if something I said would be twisted into evidence of my supposed bigotry. Watching qualified colleagues get passed over for promotions because they didn't fit your demographic preferences. This is completely inappropriate. Brian is a disgruntled employee with a history of resistance to policy changes. Brian, these are serious accusations that you're making without evidence. I've always made decisions based on qualifications and company needs. If you felt there were procedural issues, you should have filed formal complaints. Derek interrupts. Like the formal complaint Christian filed about your retaliation after he questioned your training methods? The one that mysteriously got lost in the system? Or the complaint Jake filed about discriminatory treatment that you handled by giving him additional sensitivity training as punishment? How does he know about those? Those were confidential personnel matters. Derek, I can't discuss specific employee situations due to privacy regulations, but I can assure you that all complaints were handled according to policy. Any disciplinary actions were based on documented performance issues. Christian appears in the doorway. Derek waves him in. Christian, Melissa was just explaining how she handled your complaint fairly. Want to tell her how that felt from your perspective? Christian steps into the room, his face red with anger. Fairly? You buried my complaint completely, Melissa. Then you started nitpicking everything I did, trying to build a case for termination. When I pointed out the double standard in how you treated men versus women, you said I was being defensive and needed coaching. This is turning into a witch hunt. They're ganging up on me and distorting facts. Christian, you were given additional training resources because your interactions with female colleagues were creating discomfort. Multiple people reported feeling uncomfortable with your communication style. I was trying to help you improve your professional relationships. Derek slams his hand on the desk. Stop lying. There were no complaints about Christian. I've seen the files. You made that up to justify retaliating against him for filing a legitimate grievance. Just like you made up reasons to fire me when I wouldn't back down. Feeling cornered and desperate, need to regain control of this situation. Derek, you're obviously very angry about your termination, but you can't just barge in here and make accusations. I had legitimate concerns about your behavior and the negative impact it was having on team morale. Your resistance to basic equity principles was creating problems for other employees. Jake appears in the doorway now too. This is clearly orchestrated. They're trying to intimidate me with numbers. Jake, come in. Melissa was just explaining how my resistance to equity principles justified firing me. Want to share what happened when you tried to support me? Jake walks in, his expression furious. You threatened my job, Melissa. You said anyone who supported Derek's toxic attitudes would face consequences. When I pointed out that he was our most productive developer, you said productivity didn't matter if someone was creating a hostile environment. Then you started monitoring my emails and scheduling one-on-one meetings to assess my cultural fit. But they're exaggerating everything. Making normal management oversight sound sinister. Jake, I never threatened your job. I expressed concern about the workplace culture and wanted to ensure all employees felt supported. When there are allegations of hostile behavior, it's my responsibility to investigate thoroughly. That includes talking to people who might have witnessed problematic interactions. Derek walks around to face me directly. His voice is low and controlled, but I can see the rage in his eyes. Melissa, you destroyed my reputation based on lies. You cost me my job, my income, my professional relationships here. You made me question my own behavior and wonder if I was actually some kind of monster. For months, I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus, couldn't trust my own judgment. Try to interrupt, but he continues. But you know what? Getting fired was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to prove that you were wrong about everything. I built a company with actual merit-based hiring and promotion, where people are judged by their contributions, not their demographics. Where asking questions is encouraged, not punished. Room is getting more crowded, can see other employees gathering in the hallway outside. This is becoming a public humiliation. And guess what, Melissa? My company is 60% women in technical roles. Because when you actually focus on qualifications instead of quotas, talented people rise regardless of their background. Your entire worldview is not just wrong, it's counterproductive. Need to defend my principles and professional reputation. Derek, I'm glad you found success, but that doesn't change the fact that systemic inequities exist in the workplace. Creating awareness of privilege and bias is essential for building truly inclusive environments. Just because you disagree with the methods doesn't invalidate the goals. Brian steps forward, his voice shaking with anger. Inclusive? You made it clear that men weren't welcome in your version of inclusion. Every training session was about what we were doing wrong, never about how we could actually contribute. You treated us like enemies instead of colleagues. Christian nods vigorously. She's right about systemic inequities existing, Derek. She created them. Men were systematically excluded from advancement opportunities. Our ideas were systematically dismissed as products of privilege. Our concerns were systematically ignored as fragility or defensiveness. Jake jumps in. Remember when she made us write essays about our privilege as part of professional development? When Tom from DevOps wrote about growing up in foster care, she said he was missing the point. Apparently, childhood trauma doesn't count if you're male. Derek's expression grows even darker. She did that to you too. She made me write a reflection paper on toxic masculinity after I questioned her. Promotion recommendations. When I pointed out that the 2 male candidates had better qualifications and performance reviews, she said I was unable to see past my biases. Then she used my pushback as evidence that I was resistant to growth and learning. This is getting out of hand. They're painting me as some kind of villain when all I did was my job. All of you are mischaracterizing standard professional development activities. Reflection exercises help employees examine their unconscious biases and improve their cultural competency. The fact that you all responded with resistance proves how necessary this work was. More men start filing into the office. Tom from DevOps, Ryan from sales, even Quiet Steve from accounting. They all have the same angry expression. Derek has clearly been planning this confrontation. Tom speaks up first. Melissa, you told me my background didn't matter because I still benefited from male privilege. You said my experiences of poverty and neglect were irrelevant to workplace dynamics. When I tried to explain how your assumptions were hurtful, you scheduled me for additional bias training. Ryan from sales looks furious. She blocked my promotion 3 times because she said the sales team was too male-dominated. Never mind that I had the highest close rate and best client relationships. Apparently, my performance was just typical masculine aggression disguised as competence. Steve, who rarely speaks in meetings, is practically vibrating with anger. She made me attend anger management counseling because I raised my voice during a budget meeting. When I pointed out that Sarah from marketing had yelled at me the week before, she said that was justified frustration with systemic inequities. Same behavior, different standards. That's discrimination, plain and simple. Derek watches me as each man shares his experience. His expression is satisfied, like he's enjoying watching me squirm. This is clearly revenge, not justice. Derek, you've orchestrated this whole confrontation to humiliate me. You're using your position of power to retaliate against someone who held you accountable. This is exactly the kind of toxic masculine behavior I was trying to address. The room explodes in angry voices. Accountable for what? What exactly did any of us do wrong? You never provided evidence for any of your accusations. Derek raises his hand for silence. Melissa, you just proved my point perfectly. Even now, faced with multiple testimonies about your discriminatory behavior, your response is to attack and deflect. You can't admit that you were wrong because that would shatter your entire worldview. Feel tears starting but refuse to let them see me cry. Derek, I believe in equality and inclusion. I've dedicated my career to creating fair workplaces. If some of my methods were imperfect, that doesn't invalidate the principles. You're throwing away years of progress because of personal grievances. His voice gets quiet and deadly serious. Personal grievances? You cost me my livelihood based on lies. You systematically harassed every man in this office. You created exactly the kind of hostile work environment you claim to be fighting against. And you did it all while convincing yourself you were the hero. Brian steps closer. Melissa, I want you to understand something. We're not angry because we hate equality. We're angry because you perverted the concept of equality to justify discrimination. You took legitimate concerns about fairness and turned them into weapons against innocent people. Christian nods. You made us afraid to speak up, afraid to disagree, afraid to even exist in our own workplace. That's not inclusion, that's oppression. And you enjoyed it. You enjoyed having power over us. Try one more time to salvage this situation. I understand you're all upset, but we can work through this. I'm willing to adjust my approach based on feedback. We can develop new training methods that feel more inclusive for everyone. Derek, you don't need to fire me. We can find a way forward. Derek's expression doesn't change. No, Melissa, we can't work through this. Because you fundamentally don't understand what you did wrong. Even now, you're trying to negotiate and minimize instead of taking responsibility. You're not sorry for hurting people. You're sorry you got caught. Jake speaks up. She's already planning her next move. Look at her face. She's thinking about how to spin this, how to make herself the victim. Probably planning to file a discrimination lawsuit claiming she was fired for being a woman. Actually hadn't thought of that, but it's not a bad idea. This whole situation reeks of retaliation and gender bias. Jake, that's a serious accusation. I would never make frivolous legal claims. But this does raise questions about due process and fair treatment. Derek, I think you should consult with legal before making any termination decisions. Derek laughs coldly. Oh, I've consulted extensively with legal. They're fascinated by your personnel files. Turns out, creating different standards of behavior for employees based on their gender is illegal. Who knew? Tom jumps in. The lawyer we talked to said she could face criminal charges for some of this stuff. Creating hostile work environments, discriminatory practices, retaliation against protected complaints. Derek's being generous by just firing her. Panic is setting in now. This is spiraling completely out of control. Derek, you're making a huge mistake. I have documentation supporting every decision I made. There are proper procedures for personnel changes, and this isn't it. You can't just fire someone on your first day without following company policy. Derek smiles for the first time since this conversation started. Actually, I can, because I own the company now, and because I've spent 2 years building a bulletproof case against you. Every complaint that was buried, every double standard, every retaliatory action, it's all documented. Ryan from sales pulls out his phone. We've been recording our interactions with you for months. Every time you made discriminatory comments, we documented it. Every time you retaliated against us for filing complaints, we have proof. We were building a lawsuit against the company, but Derek's solution is better. Steve nods. My lawyer said what you did to us meets the legal definition of harassment based on protected characteristics. Gender is a protected class, Melissa, even male gender. You can't treat people differently because of their sex. That's basic employment law. Derek stands up and walks to the window. The irony is beautiful, isn't it? You spent so much time lecturing us about discrimination that you never realized you were the one discriminating. You were so convinced of your own righteousness that you couldn't see your own bigotry. Classic projection. Feel completely defeated, but try one last appeal. Derek, I know I made mistakes, but my heart was in the right place. I was trying to level the playing field for people who have been historically disadvantaged. Maybe my methods were flawed, but the intention was good. Isn't that worth something? The room goes completely silent for a moment. Then Derek turns around with the coldest expression I've ever seen. Good intentions? You think good intentions justify what you did to us? You destroyed my self-confidence and made me question my own worth. You created an environment of fear and suspicion. You turned colleagues against each other based on their demographics. And you think your intentions make that okay? Brian's voice is shaking with rage. My teenage son asked me why I hated going to work every day. I had to explain to a 16-year-old that my boss thought I was a bad person because I'm a man. You affected my family, Melissa. You affected my relationship with my son. But sure, your intentions were good. Christian is clenching his fists. I started having panic attacks before your training sessions. My wife had to convince me not to quit because we needed the insurance. I felt worthless and ashamed for months because of your psychological manipulation. But your heart was in the right place, so it's all fine, right? Jake steps forward. You know what good intentions are, Melissa? They're what cowards hide behind when they don't want to face the consequences of their actions. Every tyrant in history thought they were doing the right thing. Your intentions don't matter. Your impact does. Derek walks back to the desk. Security is waiting outside to escort you to your office to collect your personal items. Your access has been revoked, and your final paycheck will be mailed to you. You have 30 minutes to clean out your desk. Feel like the room is spinning. This can't be happening. 3 years of hard work, gone. Career possibly over. Derek, please. I'm sorry if I hurt anyone. That was never my intention. I was just trying to create a better workplace for everyone. Can't we find some middle ground here? Some way to make this right? He doesn't even look at me. The middle ground was treating people fairly based on their individual merit and behavior. You rejected that option repeatedly. Now you get to live with the consequences. Stand up on shaking legs. Every man in the room is staring at me with undisguised contempt. Feels smaller than I've ever felt in my life. This isn't over, Derek. You can't just destroy someone's career because you disagreed with their methods. I'll be filing complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the State Labour Board. And I'll be consulting with attorneys about wrongful termination and gender discrimination. Derek finally looks at me again. Go ahead, Melissa. Please do that. I'd love to see you try to explain to a judge why systematically discriminating against men was justified. I'd love to watch you argue that holding different behavioural standards based on gender was legal. Please, make this as public as possible. Brian laughs harshly. She really thinks she can play the victim card now. After 3 years of making our lives hell, she's going to claim discrimination. The audacity is just incredible. Christian shakes his head. This is exactly what we predicted. She can dish it out, but she can't take it. When she had power, it was about accountability and consequences. Now that she's facing consequences, suddenly it's unfair and discriminatory. Derek motions toward the door. Security is waiting, Melissa. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Walk toward the door on unsteady legs. Can hear whispers and murmurs from the employees gathered in the hallway. Everyone watching my humiliation. Everyone seeing me get what they think I deserve. Turn back one more time. Derek, I hope you understand what you're doing here. You're dismantling years of progress toward workplace equity. You're sending a message that challenging the status quo will be punished. This sets a dangerous precedent. Derek's expression doesn't change. The only precedent being set is that discrimination is wrong, regardless of who's doing it. That treating people differently based on their gender is illegal, and that abusing power to push personal agendas has consequences. Maybe you'll learn from this experience. Jake calls out from behind me. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Melissa. And good luck finding another job when word gets around about why you were fired. Walk through the gauntlet of staring employees. Can feel their satisfaction at seeing me brought low. 3 years of building respect and authority destroyed in 30 minutes. Security guard escorts me to my office. Hands are shaking as I pack my personal items. Framed certificates, motivational books, coffee mug with feminist quotes. Everything feels meaningless now. Can hear celebration in the distance. Someone brought champagne. They're actually celebrating my firing, after everything I tried to do for this company. Finish packing and walk toward the exit. Derek appears in the hallway one final time. Melissa, I want you to remember something. Everything that happened today was the direct result of your own choices. You created this situation through your own actions. Maybe next time you'll think twice before you abuse your power. Walk out the front door and to my car. Sit in the driver's seat for 10 minutes trying to process what just happened. Career destroyed, reputation ruined, future uncertain. All because I tried to make the world a little more fair. Drive home in a daze. How did everything go? So wrong. So fast. 3 years of progress, gone. Derek's revenge, complete. But maybe this isn't over. Maybe there are legal options. Maybe I can expose what really happened here. Maybe I can get justice. One thing is certain though. Derek and his allies may have won today. But the fight for workplace equity will continue, with or without me.